Hi, folks. We're back with another episode of the Fate Creators podcast. And I hope to get into the mind today of this professional, very well known in the industry, very respected. Why? Because he's had so many hits. And I think every car he does that he's responsible for will always be a hit. This guy is Achim Anscheit. Achim Anscheit is the design director for Bugatti. He's been there since 2004 doing hit after hit after hit. Let's get into it today and let's have a look into the creative side of Achim. Hello, Achim, welcome.
Frank, it's a real pleasure and so good to see you again.
Always.
We met last time, I think, in Geneva some 8 or 9 years ago.
Yeah, I remember I was standing on the outside of the stand for Bugatti. Nobody was on the stage except you, and I think maybe Frank was there also, Frank Heil. And you called me onto the stage, and I felt like one of the luckiest people in the world to be able to get close to the Bugatti that was being shown there. And the first thing I remember was 500 kph on the center, on the speedometer in the middle.
I also remember when I walked over to the McLaren stand, but I couldn't get on because Ron Dennis was sort of checking who gets on.
Yeah.
I was so interested in seeing the P1 when it came out for the first time. It really fascinated me.
So Achim, I know that you've been with Bugatti for quite a while now. It's unusual because most of us move around quite a bit, but you've been there since, like I said, close to, was it 13 years?
16 years now, yeah.
What are you doing now with Bugatti in terms of looking how you take it from where it was when you started into the future? I know you guys are working with VR quite a bit.
Oh, you want to get into the critical topic right away. VR modeling versus clay modeling. If you remember, in 2004, the styling and the design of the Bugatti Veyron was already done. A young intern called Josef Kaban, who is now design director for Volkswagen, for the brand Volkswagen. He created the car under the supervision of Hartmut Varkus, remember? Hartmut Varkus and Thomas Ingenlath, who is the CEO of Polestar. I'm sorry, Thomas, Polestar. Also Mark Lichte, who is director of design now for Audi, and Andreas Mint, who is director of design for Bentley. That was that team, but Josef was a young intern creating that car, or Hartmut Varkus gave him a chance. And Hartmut Varkus, if you remember, one of his trademarks was to give young people a chance. Very young people, with a fresh, innovative idea, he really gave them a chance to get their hand onto a model or a full-size model. And then actually Josef made it all the way to win the proposal for the Veyron. So the car was pretty much done, but the technical development just took so long. It was so difficult to succeed, to really prove that the car could have 1001 horsepower, could go faster than 400 kilometers per hour, would have enormous torque gearbox, something like you have never experienced before, four-wheel drive. And then on top of it all, being so sovereign in style and interior quality and layout that you can also take this car and in all souveränität and sovereignty drive with your wife in front of the opera. Remember? That was the goal at the time. Yeah,
it was the best in everything, pretty much.
So when I got there in 2004, the styling was done and the engineering just came to a process where things were really resolved. And in 2005, the car launched. And then I looked after everything Veyron from there on, like the Super Sport, the Grand Sport, the Vitesse, and all the other versions, and all the individualization. Actually, the Veyron was the car that started it all, that started the $1 million segment.
Yeah, the first hypercar, you could say.
And in the beginning, the car didn't achieve the top speed by far. 370 was the limit. Took enormous effort, really, to make it go above 400.
Was that due to the cooling issues? Achim, you had a lot of cooling problems at that speed, no?
My life at Bugatti, basically, my designer life at Bugatti is really dominated by cooling issues, still to this very day. As long as we are dealing with that engine, it is dominated by thermodynamics and how to get rid of the heat that this enormous power plant is developing. Okay, we designed everything around the Veyron and took care of that car front to back. But then finally, we also in 2009, our president at the time, Dr. Pevkin, gave us the chance to create the Galibier concept.
Yeah, the four-seater. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. That was exciting. You know, it was just the W16 power plant reversed and as a front mid-engine layout with the transaxle gearbox. The Galibier wasn't supposed to be. Maybe later on we can get into that if you like, why it didn't materialize.
We will, but just out of curiosity there, Achim, not to stop you in the flow, but was the Galibier pushed from the design department?
Pushed forward that we do it, or
in other words, did the idea to do the Galibier, was it coming from upper management, or was it being pushed from design?
It was a suggestion from Dr. Pevkin at the time to do a limousine.
Oh, from Pevkin, okay, got it.
That in a way also has a certain relation to the Bentley Mulsanne at the time. But then all the management changed, if you remember.
Yes, there was a big change, yeah.
All of a sudden we did customer clinics and we took it more and more away from a four-door coupe towards an Uber car, in, you know, the German expression, eierlegende Wollmilchsau.
Yeah.
Check of all trades, so to say, no? And the car became 1.5 meters longer and 15 centimeters higher without getting wider, obviously. And you know better than me what that does to the proportion of a car, no?
Difficult. Mm.
It became a car that wanted to beat everything in this world and still have more than 1,000 horsepower, you know, and still go 400 kilometers per hour. There's just a limit where I think you are starting to dilute a concept. You know, if you want to be the best in every segment, in every thinking segment that there can be. So that hurt the car enormously, and then it was Walter de Silva actually at the time who encouraged me to look into a possible sports car successor, into a Bugatti Veyron successor, in case something goes wrong with the Galibier. And we had a feeling, you know, this project tanks if we continue like this. And it was Mr. Piëch himself who actually pulled the plug.
Yeah, because there was a lot of press on that car. I was excited about it. Yeah.
Well, long story short, then when it came to that day that the plug was pulled, I already had a sports car concept ready to go, and we presented that on the very same day. And they walked over to that car, and that was the first model of the Bugatti Chiron.
Yeah, and it was an update. It was a good jump away from the Veyron. I remember it was. I mean, even with the Galibier, you could tell it was a Bugatti, but the Veyron was a good jump forward from the Chiron. The Chiron was a good jump from the Veyron. That was good. Yeah.
I think there was a difference just how the Veyron was created and how the Chiron was created by getting into the package and starting to use our philosophy that we still hold today, which is form following performance. I think in Hartmut Warkus' time, he had such a close alliance with Ferdinand Piëch. He pretty much had a chance to put the hammer down and say the design and the styling is not to be changed. And if you compare the show car to the production car, there's not so much that really changed. But it was clear to me when we designed the Chiron, it couldn't go the very same way. You know, the car had to have 1,500 horsepower then, go way faster than 400. So many thermodynamic issues, like you pointed out. We had to find a way to create a win-win situation between engineering and design in every aspect. And that kept on being really my mantra, working on all the other projects then later on. That we would find situations where the engineering and design might not find a solution immediately, but if you think and talk or negotiate in a friendly. There's always a way that you find something. And I speak to you, looking at the Maserati MC12. You know so much about the performance of those cars.
No, it's exactly what you said. Where there's a will, there's a way. I hate it when people say, especially you happen across it a lot in, say, the average car where the engineer is almost not wanting to find a solution or just looking for a safe way. But I can imagine at Bugatti, the engineers are very intent on finding, they have to find extreme solutions to things. And again, it's like you said, there's always a way to find it. It might cost a little bit of money, but it's part of the design and research and engineering process that we have to find ways to make these things work, especially at the high end, like with Bugatti, where you can't follow, you have to lead.
And in a way, it also has to be long-lasting. No, sometimes it comes with quite some burden and responsibility that these things should not only look good in 3 years from now, but also in 10 or 20 or even 50 years, when those cars might be present in Pebble Beach on the lawn. I think it comes with a certain responsibility to be very clear to a DNA that can only be your brand, and that also in terms of form language has a chance to survive as clean as possible. No?
A lot of people ask, what is that formula to achieve a car that looks good for a long time? But my philosophy, and I want to ask you about it, is too many designers today, I think they're trying too hard to establish a new direction or a new look, and they're over complicating the design so much that it becomes almost a confusion of surfaces and things. But there's something to be said about purity of design, simplicity almost, in reduction of design, to just do what it has to do, not become aesthetic, for aesthetic values, to make it more impressive or something. It basically is, the design is the result of making the performance work on the vehicle.
When we speak about form following performance, it's not really possible to, I think, to back up your design on every corner and every line of the car. I mean, there's a certain amount, obviously, of stylistic creation there, and proportions and all the things that we need to respect as car designers and rate them through our vehicle. But if it comes to longevity, you know better than I, it is impossible to create a car that looks up to date in 50 years time. But a car can look authentic, I think, in 50 years time. That it looks the way it does for certain DNA aspects and where the brand is coming from, or if the brand, had to turn in intentional different directions stylistically. But if design is really readable as being something very authentic of the time and having something to do with technical development, I think this is the most welcoming reward for a car designer, if he can really solve a problem on the car and then have a stylistic decision relating to that problem. And the reason, for example, just to give you one example on the Chiron, why you have this C line on there. For a lot of people, that C line really looks like a stylistic, coming from your elbow, just letting it shoot through. But the real reason behind is that we had so many more radiators on the car to feed them that you needed actually an enormous air intake, and the logical development up from the Veyron was really to open up that Veyron line, this duotone line, to create a grander duotone line, so to say. And that actually for me was a nice, or is today still a nice example of form following performance.
Yeah, you're having to increase the square centimeter intake, obviously, for an engine that powerful. But I think what's genius about it, or absolutely incredible, is the way you've made it look good also. I mean, if you took an engineer and asked him to do it, he would probably just do it in a very basic, almost architectural way. But Bugatti's been able to do it with a sensuality almost to it, an artistic way, and it works. You know, at the same time, it works. So that's that honesty of design that I like. You know, that's exactly what you were saying before. The what I call purity, but we can also say it's honest design, is what you see is actually there for a reason. You know, it has a purpose. And that's what I noticed about, especially with some of the like when I was looking recently at the 110, I was just completely, my jaw dropped, because it's a stunning vehicle and it has to work, but it just, everything seems to be done in a way that everything complements each other. The performance and the design are working hand in hand. And that's what's been impressive, I think, in all the cars that you've been there responsible for. So that is incredible. But your daily driver, or let's call it your favorite go-to car, is a 1981, I think, or 1981 911.
Yeah, it's a 81 SC chassis, at least. But that's about it. Everything else is pretty much Frankenstein.
Yeah, something out of GTA or something, Grand Theft Auto.
And it was also with a look to one of my all-time design heroes, Freeman Thomas, who you probably also know very well.
Very well, yeah.
With their group called the R Group, no, in California,
Yeah.
that they created, and I admired that quite a lot. And I started thinking how I would eventually create my personal take on a 911, and I started with a zinc coated body then of an 81 SC, because it also has the wide fenders in the rear. It's quite nice. But then I pretty much try to make it look still as simple as possible. And if you look at an F model, you know, pre-73, there's nothing cleaner than that, no? With
That's gorgeous, yeah.
But I gutted it all out. I remember before I started that project, I had a chance from work to test drive a Lotus Elise, which is still one of our all-time favorites, no?
Handling-wise, it's incredible.
Yeah, and I said, God, what could I do? And then it dawned on me, it could be a 911 completely gutted out, and you know, the car has no interior anymore. No carpeting, no sound dampening, no heat exchanger, obviously. Everything that you do not need for pure driving is missing. It's almost like a single-speed bike, you know, without anything attached to it. But I also admit it feels like a race car, but from the outside it looks very harmless.
Yeah, don't they call those outlaws now? The Porsche outlaws?
Yeah, Magnus Walker and
Yeah.
great people out there doing something else with their 911s than just restoring them.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing to be said about restoring, but at the same time, there's something also about, you know, taking something that is so iconic like that and doing something to them that is a little bit more your view of the car, you know, what you want that car to be. It's not, you know, there are not enough cars out there that represent what the real car is, but there are very few cars out there that people have the liberty or the creativity or whatever to interpret it in their way. Which also, by the way, you know, I mean, it's what makes Bugatti too, is you have so many cars that you guys offer.
In all honesty, Frank, talking about the renaissance of coach building, which is totally nice to see coming back to some brands. When we were done with the Chiron, I had the feeling, here we go, now I have to wait another 10 years eventually to do the next one. And I openly admitted to myself, okay, you might have to do something else or go somewhere else, because you have that out of the system. And I was so happy that the Chiron finally fell into production and started production. But then we had a chance also with a new president to do something that we always wanted to do, and this is these coach build variants, you know, 40 cars, 8 cars, 1 car. And that president was Stefan Winkelmann at the time, you know, opening up that possibility for us. And that really saved my career at Bugatti, I would say, or to really motivated me. Yeah.
Well, kept the flame alive.
Motivated to stay, you know, and all of a sudden we had all the chances. And then we created the Divo, and then the 110, and then La Voiture Noire, and then the Bolide as one of the last projects. It was really, in German you say it was a Brustlöser. Really my chest was opening up, and I was so happy that my team had a chance to show more of their creativity. Where else you can take a Bugatti DNA with the help of those coach building projects?
Yeah, absolutely. I think those projects are, I mean, you know, as designers, we love to work on concept cars, but the ability actually to take a concept car and actually make it reality, therein lies the big challenge too, because, you know, it's very easy to make a car look stunning and gorgeous on the show stand, but that car is much more impressive when it's actually on the road. And too many times we have to backtrack. You know, the people always ask us, why didn't you produce the car that you showed at the Geneva Motor Show or wherever, Frankfurt? And then we have to come back in and say, well, you know, it's technology, it's certification, homologation restrictions, all these things that have to make us back off and come back to reality. And I remember one of the cars that for me was probably the most disappointing, because I loved it so much as a concept car, still great as a real car, but was when did you ever meet Grant Larson?
Oh, Grant was,
you know Grant, yeah.
When I was a junior designer at Porsche, Grant was sitting on the table behind me.
Yeah, like sitting in front of Leonardo da Vinci.
Like a real hero. But that was the problem at Porsche at the same time. If you come there as a junior, there were so many talented top designers. Grant, as you say, Grant Larson, Steve Murkett, Pinky Lai, Tony Hutter.
It's like a who's who of car design.
As a junior, you didn't have a chance to get your hand on a full size. I had to go somewhere else to make mistakes. I started at Porsche, but then I left to go to Spain to Volkswagen, to the advanced design studio there, because you probably would also underline, as an exterior designer, you need to make mistakes and learn from mistakes. What works, what doesn't work, you know, and only that helps you to get better over time. And in the end, also exterior design is this balance between experience, what works and what does not work.
Yeah, that's like you said, it's very important to make those mistakes. A lot of people, you know, are upset when they make a mistake, but gosh, that's the only way you can learn. And you're right, when you're a young designer, you know, the only way to get tempered or harder, to make the metal harder, is to put your hand in the fire or put your, you know, take the risk and learn from those mistakes. But you had I mean, gosh, that's impressive that all those people working around you and you learning from them, you learn so much more working with people like that instead of, you know, I remember I did an internship at General Motors, and then I think in 10 weeks I learned more than in 4 years at university. It's just that kind of an environment. But I want to touch on this because it's a very big passion of mine, Achim. It's the I don't know if it's an education or what, but it's definitely a mental way of approaching anything in life. And it's your experience in the motorcycle world before you actually became, you know, a professional automotive designer, but the influence obviously that your father had with you as you were growing up, and that winning mentality. You know, you have to push the limits. If you don't know, guys, Achim's father was world champion 2 years, 64, 66, I believe.
Mm-hmm. 66, 67, 68.
And then you got into trials.
Well, I was nagging for so long to get my own trial bike when I was 10. It was a 125 Montesa trial bike.
A Kota
123 actually, you know, and the handlebars up here, and I had the feeling that this thing would ride more with me than me with the motorcycle.
Yeah, it was like riding a stallion almost, but...
Yeah, and so very early on he introduced me into trials riding.
Was that in Belgium? Where was that? Where were you learning?
In Germany, in south of Germany, yeah. I grew up in the Stuttgart area. Then later on I transformed that to the horror of my father somehow, because he thought I should study something, you know, decent or mechanical engineering. And when I told him that I pretty much would like to create a circus act on a motorcycle and tour the country and Europe,
The German, as we call it, the Evel Knievel of Germany.
even though it was more, it was not so serious, you know, like an Evel Knievel stunt thing. It was, you know, everything that you can do with a trial bike. And I think what those guys do today is fantastic, really, really impressive in these arena trials, no?
Yeah, no, it's another world now. Makes us look like amateurs.
But that became actually my profession because things were going well, and I had a permanent contract with Yamaha and Michelin tires, and they sent me all around Europe to perform at certain events. But it was clear to me also, it's just like being in the circus. You have to every day practice, you know, practice, because if you're really passing with the front wheel of people's noses just like this, you know, things have to be just right, and you have to be in contact with your motorcycle all the time. It was clear to me there's always something that could happen, you know, health-wise, or from a fall, or that I cannot do this for the rest of my life. And I always had a passion for drawing, especially perspective drawing, because then you have a chance, just like on a CAD system, really to construct everything. And this is what I tell young people when they want to become designers or car designers, and they want to practice their sketching skills, is you have to master perspective first. And then you're able to see the whole world, every object as a construction, no? And vanishing points, and then you can exaggerate that or desaturate that, and so on. And so I then started studying and going to an evening school to learn better sketching and sketching cars.
So you completely stopped the motorcycle side?
No, I did this parallel. And mostly there was a summer. In the summer, there were a lot of events, spring, summer, autumn.
Yeah, because that virus is still, that you're once addicted to motorcycles, you never lose it. I don't know how you could come off of a motorcycle and forget it and do something else. It stays with you.
And I studied then always in the winter time, you know, the winter courses. But then when Harm Lagai actually from Porsche gave me the chance to study full time, and getting some support from Porsche as well to go over there. That was the moment, yeah. That's when I was in Pforzheim. So I interrupted, or I stopped in Pforzheim, and I left and went to Art Center with Harm's support, actually. It wasn't easy, but then I had to stop with the motorcycle career and concentrate only on car design.
When you went to Art Center, under Harm Lagai's suggestion, you had the confidence that when you came back, you would be able to start straight in with Porsche?
That was a handshake agreement with Harm.
Yeah. Well, shaking hands with Harm Lagai is the same as signing in blood sometimes, I guess.
Shaking hands with harmless guy. That was Harm's nickname. We're still in contact. Harm has really stayed very close to my heart, and we see each other from time to time. And he's also still into motorcycles, by the way.
Yeah, there are a few people I've met in my career that shows you have to be very careful when you're on your motorcycle. On the road, it's nice, but you can't account for other people's mistakes on the roads and come out of it too well. So, Achim, one point I know we started on it right away, but it really, really interests me quite a bit is the direction, because Bugatti's in that state of movement right now with what's coming next, and you know, you have this, we have this era coming upon us very quickly of especially like with Porsche and those companies pushing electrics. And I know Porsche is working with biofuels also. They're one of the leaders in terms of coming up with how do we keep a internal combustion engine alive. But my worry, not my worry, but one of my thoughts is, how is Bugatti going to deal with this electric push, knowing that you guys are also going a little bit away from the analog way of creating cars and much into the much quicker development phases of what VR. We both know how VR is a great tool for us in the world of design. And I know you feel the same about clay models, that they're a great source of development, and the romance that we have associated with previously with the smell of sulfur when you walked into the clay studio, and now we're going eco-friendly, and maybe that in the future we lose the the necessity to work with clay models. How are you approaching that with Bugatti? Because it's a romantic brand, it's been around for so long. Do you not fear that digital is going to take a bit of that human touch away from Bugatti?
Okay, maybe too difficult enough to speak about the future of Bugatti, but if we are thinking and considering BEV drivetrains, what is a semi-electric or full electric drivetrain for a Bugatti? I don't think that's not answered so quickly and so easily. What is the equivalent to this USP that we have today, the W16 engine, this enormous power plant? It's just endless, like you saw on the Project Bolide. What is possible if you just let that power plant run without any additional weight around it. To find a similar approach in technical fascination when we are switching to another kind of power source, that is a difficult question for Bugatti, and obviously our engineers involved are thinking about that. But the answer maybe must not be given immediately, I would say, or must be considered really, really carefully what this could be and where it would take us. And I also don't think we should just follow immediately into a certain direction. Remember when quartz watches came around in the 70s, and everybody was wondering, why do we need mechanical watches for, in the future? And look what happened. A couple of years later, it meant the renaissance of mechanical chronographs and a blooming of the haute horlogerie of the Swiss industry. A company like Bugatti has to consider very careful if they follow in the direction where everybody is going, or if we actually have to do maybe even quite the opposite. Then when we create new cars, and that is a subject that we, via Tim Bravo, our director of communication, was introducing, hey, maybe you guys can also chat about this a little bit. And I know how you feel, and we feel the same thing, Frank. I love still the smell of clay. I still like to touch something. I'm completely in the same boat to have something so tangible, with so much 3D appeal, where you can actually lay your hands on a sculpture together with a modeler to really tickle out the fineness. All that romance that clay modeling really brings with it, I would sign all that, and also the jokes with the English modelers around the car, and this is fantastic times. However, and maybe this is due to that I am a very small design group. I have 25 people max in my studio. There was a point, I remember, after September 2015, remember what happened there? IAA. Our budget really became very sparse. To say it very openly, we wanted to deliver a black zero to the group in order to not lose the group any money, and also not to get immediately into the trouble that we would be sold off. Nobody could see where this whole story after September 15 would be going and how bad it would be. So for a long time I didn't have much budget, pretty much zero budget in the design studio. And that brought us into working much heavier in VR. And I had a fabulous design team around with Sasha Selipanov, Etienne Salome, and Frank Heil, who is still with me.
Frank is with you. Sasha is at Koenigsegg, I think.
Sasha left to Koenigsegg, yeah,
Yes, yeah.
and Etienne became his own boss. And Frank, as I said, is still with me. But we all gave the VR process a really hard push, a really intense push, because you know how it was still some 10 years ago. You were looking at a CAD screen, but what you saw then in the yard was different. You know, all of a sudden the sunlight hits this thing and looks different, and you go around it in 3/4 view, and things are not the same way as you saw it on the CAD system. But then the knot solved itself when we had much better virtual glasses, and this was really the key. It is a disadvantage now to actually do it the conservative way with a classic clay model. Now I can be quite a bit faster. I can also do my work on a smaller budget, or use budget than for something else in my process. And I don't have the feeling I'm losing quality, because the VR image by now, and this only happened in the last 3 to 4 years now, is so good that you really have the feeling you are looking at a real car. You know, with the right lens, you know, very much like the human eye, and the sunlight, how it hits the model, and the drop shadow when you go around the car, is like a real car. It's really not much off. And then when we are somewhat satisfied, then we push the button and we do a hard model immediately, transparent, and we have it sitting there. But then it's not a big surprise actually from the system to come there. And I admit I would have not thought this to be possible so quickly, but 4 or 5 years ago there was a breakthrough in technology, how we look at those things. And only that allowed us those turnaround processes with the Devo, for example, and also with the Lavature Noir at the time.
Yeah, and it brings in a huge cost saving, because when you're developing at that level there, and you know how much time it takes to move the belt line or a feature line a couple of mil. You know, it's going to take you a week, or it's going to take the modeler a week to get it absolutely right when he changes all the surfaces just because you've made a small move. And if you do it in VR or in CAD or whatever, and you can feed it back and check it, you can have it in an afternoon at the most. You know, it's incredible.
Yeah, and maybe the next step there, that you can actually do it in real time.
Or in real time, that's with gravity.
Fully shaded, everything, and you're just pulling the lines right there, and the surfaces is immediately adjusting to that. No.
Are you, just out of curiosity, there, Achim, are you using Oculus or one of the systems like that? Oculus or?
Yeah.
There's a company, I think in Finland also, that is doing it, where they're working with the peripheral vision even, so everything blurs away from the center of your focus. So if you're looking at something, typically today, everything is focused. And so this company is working now, I think it's Varjo, I think it is, that they're typically starting to give you that real sensation of peripheral vision almost. But I agree, I mean, it's absolutely, I've been working with it for the last year and a half almost on some projects that I've been working on, where you can sit here. I mean, even with COVID becoming an issue and we can't go into the studio, you know, you use it here. And I've gotten to the point where it's small. I wouldn't say it's exactly, you know, it can't get better than real life, but it's pretty darn close, like you said. It gives you the confidence, I think, to make a decision, and that's what's necessary to do it. And if you have the space, you can, like you said, walk around the actual VR model like it's a real hologram. And even if you re-engineer, you know, you say, okay, I think we're there. I think it's a great stage we're at. Then when you actually mill the model, you're much closer. You know, and the little fine tuning can happen at that stage, but you are making big cost savings, big time savings, and in the end, that's what we're all trying to achieve.
But it's also a breakthrough, absolutely. If you think about, you know, measuring plates, measuring arms, high precision,
space,
clay ovens, you know. And now having to protect from the smells.
Health and safety.
Then five clay modelers around the car. Goes ching, ching, ching.
Absolutely, yeah.
building up the frame for a 2-ton clay model, has to be rock solid, and then everything on top of that, and then the clay, and then milling that, and then the in and out and back and forth. It takes a long time and it costs a lot of money. And by the time I have a somewhat, in the classic process, I would say to have a somewhat reliable surface on a clay model or something that you like, you probably have spent already 400,000 to 500,000 euro. Alone the technical base is almost 100,000 euro already. In this process, now clay modelers in a way translated became VR modelers. You still need experts in that field. But you're working with them, and at some point you just push the button, and that hard model might cost you only 90,000 euro, compared to 500,000. So add 90,000 euro and use only 1/3 of the time. And then, add maybe another 100,000 for the VR modelers. Then you are at roughly 200,000 euro compared to 500,000 in half the amount of time that you used to have in the old process.
Yeah, I'm wondering also, maybe there's a room still for clay modeling, perhaps at the very, very beginning when we do the sketch models for the theme development or for the theme decision. So basically we do our quarter scales. We can do a scale model fairly quickly. One modeler can usually put out a scale model. But at the same time, if you can replicate that scale model immediately or that first theme immediately in VR as a one-to-one, because even the scale models sometimes are misleading. The quarter scale, you think it's great, you blow it up to full size and suddenly it's like, that curve is a bit strong or that radius is a bit too tight or whatever. So there is that. But I really do hope that it's kind of hard to let go of something that you really cherish, that was part of our upbringing, doing the tapes and doing the clays and that kind of camaraderie that we have with the team, when we're actually working late into the night on a clay model that's right in front of you. It seems to be becoming a bit of a colder thing when we go digitally. It's fantastic, the results are wonderful, but it's hard to let go of that, I think, for a designer who's been brought up in there.
For me as well, Frank. Absolutely, for me as well. Yeah.
No, that's one of the interesting things, because I always felt that Bugatti was, or I still feel it, of course. The Bugatti is one of those traditional brands that, we can't hang on to the past. We can't be, resisting what's coming in the future. And I can see a lot of incredible things coming for the future of car design. I think people should be, young people should still be as fascinated and as enthusiastic about the future of design. There's a whole shift, obviously, now for ecologically friendly approaches to cars, and this whole transition now that we're thinking cars are going to become more vehicles of different types of usage, not just, driving the car here to there, but using the car as a working environment or a entertainment environment or whatever. But yeah, Bugatti, with its position as being a supercar, hypercar brand, and all those traditional things that make that kind of vehicle appealing to us, when we start going electric, oh gosh, there's something to be said about vibrations and sound. That's why I hope Porsche really starts accelerating this biofuel development. I think that's going to be we're going to realize that if everything goes electric, we've really shot ourselves in the foot, because that would, a lot of us don't need cars for entertainment value, but a lot of us at that level, you don't really need nobody needs a Bugatti, nobody needs a McLaren. It's all for the emotional appeal of that vehicle.
Well, talking about longevity there and future generations of cars, when we speak about interiors, it seems like almost a competition at the moment who has more screens on the interior. So especially for a brand like Bugatti, I would venture to say, could there also be a different approach? What's next after that? The screen technology, for example, really makes a car date very fast. No? How can we have the same amount of information but displayed in a different way, or displayed on material, so to say? Does it really have to be a real screen, or can we display information in a different way, even other than head-up displays? Those are interesting thoughts, I think, for brand Bugatti to not follow the total mainstream, and also being aware what a couple of screens around your dashboard really do to the appearance of the car and the brand per se.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, Achim, on that point, because I could never. I'm sure we have a similar passion for watch industry, horological devices, I guess. I would never buy a digital Rolex. It has to be analog, otherwise it's. And I saw lately the Ferrari, especially with the Roma, they're going in a much more digital approach, and it's lacking the soul. It's almost becoming generic in a certain way. Digital is digital, and you can't really change too much or give it too much unique character. Whereas with the analog type feel you have in vehicles, sports vehicles, it's all about. It's like fine audio equipment. It's feeling it, and that sensation that analog. We even have it now with record players coming back in. Vinyl records are coming back after we went through the digital phase. It's almost people are longing or missing this direct connection with it. So,
and at the same time, and I'm sure you feel the same way with your projects, how do you not remain a naysayer to new technology? How do you keep up with technology, but are not regarded as somebody who holds on only to the past and being a hopeless romantic in this whole process, which you cannot afford to do? So somewhere there in between, you need to find the golden middle ground, I think, how to really advance designs and the future of the company, and looking into the future without really holding on to all the things that made us fall in love with car design in the first place. But we have to bring ourselves to move on, to make the next step.
Yeah, that's our job. I mean, we as creative people, as designers, we have to, we realize that, and it's our responsibility to be able to transmit still, even into the future, this reason why people fall in love with our cars. There is a whole new movement, the generation of not wanting to own things. The younger generation now, they typically tell us they're more enjoying the experience than actually the headache of owning something. It's nice to own something, but that's our way of thinking. I think the future just basically want to experience things. So how do we make a product like the kind of cars that we do still be desirable? It's we have to be careful. I think there will come a time when people are very much more concerned than they are even today about the environment, and so, which I understand. It's like you said, we can't stay stuck in a certain time period and become that hopeless romantic, as you call it. But we have to also understand that there's a new generation coming along, but supercars and hypercars are, of course, they have to be responsible for the environment and things like that, and there will be ways like fuel technology. My vision is hopefully that we don't go completely electric with everything, and we become too synthetic, too perfect almost. I think a lot of the love that we have for these types of objects are the mistakes, not the mistakes, but the feeling that it's not perfect. That there's a little bit of improvement still available, that we can move it to another level. As soon as we get to that level where every car is doing 1.5 from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, then it's not about horsepower, it's not about performance, it's more about the joy of the product or the sensation. So, and that obviously, the more digital we go with technology, the closer everybody's going to become to having something almost like a generic product. So what the USP, do you see a USP for Bugatti in the future? Because, you know, as soon as Ferrari goes electric or fully electric or Porsche or anybody like that, then we're almost all in one big segment. Nobody can say they're faster than the other. The sensations are more diluted, I think.
I think there should always be a unique USP for a brand like Bugatti. What that could be is probably a little bit too early to talk about, but there's maybe also the USP of still creating coach-built cars. I think this is something that Bugatti will keep as a strong asset in the product lineup, and I think we made a good name for ourselves with this return of coach building, and we have some good customer trust base.
Loyalty, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And those loyal customers now see that, you know, also the coach-built cars are offering the same kind of reliability and quality as the core product, the Bugatti Chiron. So this was something to be proven, I think. There was always something about coach building, coach-built cars, just a couple of cars, you know, what about liability? How well do they work technically? There was a big question mark, and I think Bugatti has proven now that also a coach-built product can be as reliable and as sovereign as the base product, or even better. And I think that is key.
Yeah, because you're putting more attention into the car itself. Do you bring loyal customers, for example, into the design process?
Sometimes. It depends. If it's one car only,
then you must.
then no, we travel to the customer.
Oh, yeah, it's the other way around.
Pretty much.
Go to the palace.
When we did 40 cars with the Devo, then not. Because then you're starting to prefer one customer maybe over the other, you know, then it becomes tricky.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Yeah, one feels cheated and the other one feels like he...
Why was I not involved?
Exactly, yeah. And that's this thing that we face a lot of times when we do like Gordon Murray now with the T50, you know, you thought, wow, that's the ultimate. And then you find out that there's an even more ultimate than the road version, of course, but they're doing a race version. But you think, if I had known about that, I would have gone for that one. That's true. Yeah. I mean, anybody who gets a Bugatti at that end is getting something very special and very unique anyway. So it's not like he's going to see somebody else at the stoplight, you know, in the same car, you know, parked next to him, or see it somewhere where he's parked his car. So that's still a very unique experience. Achim, is there anything else we can talk about that you want to say, get off your chest, or speak about, or anything?
Where's your rubber shark, I wanted to
ask. Let's see, do I have any fish in the house? Where do I have my fish? No, I've got a horse in the garden, a dead horse. He's dead. He's never been alive. He's made out of wood. No rubber sharks. I was reading today about a shark that they've just discovered, but it has wings on it. Actual wings on the shark. Absolutely amazing. Kind of like an airplane, a shark fuselage with wings on it.
Well, I was wondering, and I wanted to ask you, do you think we will have autonomous flying before we have autonomous driving level 5?
100%, Achim. I guarantee you that, with no doubt in my mind. Having listened to professionals, not just an opinion, having listened to, you know, I was working in Munich for 18 months, working with a eVTOL company, those electric vertical takeoff and landing jets, the new taxis, flying taxis, we call them basically. And the truth is, first of all, the safety is the most important part of those aircraft, because if you're transporting 5-10 people at low altitude over a city, which is not allowed with a helicopter because of, the helicopter has one source of, if one thing goes wrong with the helicopter, the propeller stops spinning and you're at low level. There's no safety way to save the airplane, the flight. So with these flying taxis that are coming around 2024, 2025 to market, they have so many levels of redundancy. In other words, if one thing goes wrong, that's not the single point of failure. Other thing has to go wrong and another thing. So it's always a backup. So safety being such a critical element of these, that they have to fly with more safety or higher safety level than commercial aircraft. Yeah. So to do that, they have to eliminate all points of failure. And one of the biggest points of failure in aircraft is pilot error. So the sooner they go away from having pilots, the better, because the pilot can make a bad decision, whereas if a computer makes 0 or 1 as a decision, that's the only possibility. So level 5 on the road, I think, is incredibly difficult, because unless you have a special lane where only level 5 is operating, the moment you mix level 5 with level 2 or level 3, there's going to be an accident, because the level 5 can try to avoid it, but the level 2 or 3 or 4, whatever, less, can't. It'll cause problems. So and morally, there's still the moral issue of computer having to make a decision, which how do you tell the insurance company that the car made the wrong decision? It's not your fault. So I don't think level 5 will happen at all. Definitely not happen before flight, and flight will actually have it very, very soon. We obviously have it right now, level 5 in military flying, drones and things. But I don't see level 5 actually it might be an uneducated guess, but level 5 automobile driving will probably be decades away, I think. Unless, like I said, they allow, two lanes for level 5. But then you got to think also, then what happens if you turn your seat the opposite direction and face backwards in a car? I was thinking about this the other day. Do we not need airbags anymore? Or what? Because if you have an accident and the airbag's in the wrong, how important it is. We have the airbag, the angles of impact and all this. Suddenly the seat is changing position. That completely throws away the issue of airbags. Seat belts, I don't know. It's
Totally, I agree. I was also wondering, totally different subject. What spurs your curiosity and creativity other than a lava lamp, blue pills and a hand grenade, and the rubber shark?
Yeah, well, without that, hot showers and a good cigar and whiskey. The basic necessities of man, basically. No, I think the true secret for good creativity is a balanced lifestyle where you don't burn out. A lot of designers at some point, they just start to get stuck in their ways, or they become too, what would you call that, sort of stereotypes in their ways of thinking. They only do one type of design. So I think the way to stay fresh and active is to think in cross-disciplinary ways. In other words, not just do things the way we've always done them. Find outside sources of inspiration from other industries, so you can approach design from a different direction. We realize as designers that we should realize as designers that we have a huge responsibility to the world. We're producing products that are not only useful, but our designs make people happy, and but at the same time they have to be safe and good for the earth and all that. And there's always innovation coming along that we have to be on top of, because it's the same as good doctors. If you don't keep learning as a doctor, you're useless. Medical procedures are updated all the time, so you have to stay young in your mind. So anything that basically, for creativity, that can keep you at the top of your game is important. I think research is incredibly important for us as designers. We should never think we know it all, because even in the craziest industries, there's always something that you can sort of learn from, that you can apply. You know, now with everything going sort of towards this electronic revolution, there's a lot of things that we can learn from electronic companies that can bring things in, you know, in terms of communication and activation ways of making things happen within the vehicle. So my only recipe is just learn in the mornings. I spend a lot of time in the mornings just researching new things that I can find on the internet. I subscribe to a lot of innovation sites that tell me about what's happening in bicycles, airplanes, of course, plastics or materials. And so you keep this kind of childish wonder or curiosity. I think that's the main thing, is if we keep thinking like children, we can't stop learning. So, and then of course the balance is important. If you do something for too long, you will burn out. It's just normal. Anything, if you do it too long, it's just overload. You can be very passionate about it, but at the same time you need to give the mind time to absorb it and assimilate it, and then go back again. You can't run a marathon and then expect to feel fresh the next day. You have to rest and repair.
True. When I think about, you know, what spurs the creativity and the curiosity, sometimes it comes from actually solving a problem, no? That you go to bed and you haven't solved that problem somehow, and next morning after the shower it goes click, and sometimes it seems like your brain needs to process over time or over good night's sleep, so to say. Very concretely, I, for example, learn a lot, and then that kickstarts my creativity when I look at Formula One, for example, where I'm watching Formula One with the F1 channel. There's a gentleman called Sam Collins, who does the Tech Talk. This is highly fascinating and interesting, how he describes what's going on really in Formula One in detail. A lot to learn there. And then that makes me also think about all the genius things that have been invented and then have been banned in Formula One by regulation. You know, everything that those guys have thought about in the last 25 years. Back to the fan car of Gordon Murray with Niki Lauda, you know, where they for 2 races they didn't spot really how performant that car or what the trick was on the car. And then when the car went to the technical inspection, part of the technical inspection was that you had to rev the engine up, but actually on that system, you know, basically creating a vacuum under the car, it sucked the car down on the ground every time you would rev up the engine. So the mechanics would go to the technical inspections, and they put their steel cap shoes underneath the car so that the car would not go down. And nobody spotted that in the first 2 races. I think anecdotes like this are wonderful, and Formula One history is full of technical marvels that have been banned in the season after. I think there's a lot to learn. And I think also there is a lot to learn from just people around us who are inspiring, whether they are still with us or heroes of the past like Da Vinci. But I look also towards an Elon Musk in today's time, you know, with all the respect for everything that he pushes forward in our time. But a Steve Jobs, of course. And artists, you know, I just sadly saw that Daft Punk
sad news.
Called it quits. Looking forward what they will do next, eventually individually. But you know, those were people. They were in the electronic clubs in the beginning of the 90s. You know, doing really the music that we still like to hear.
Good today
in clubs, and so creative at that time. And then how they changed the way how they appeared, and also how how they collaborated with so many people in the music industry, and also always very creative. And so, in other words, it's people that also give us creativity to learn something from. No?
Yeah, there's a strong connection between music and well, creativity in general, obviously. Well, yeah, that's another source of creativity is music. I don't know how you operate the studio for Bugatti, but I remember I was telling the guys, turn it up to 11, you know. Take your earphones out and listen to the music. Yeah, it's
depended on the time of the day or it's the weekend.
Well, we did it every day.
All became a bit more difficult, no, in the home office now.
Yeah, for you guys, it's difficult. You're not working at all in the design studio.
Yeah, we are working full on, but I miss the VR glasses equipment in my home personally. I go back into the studio just to verify our data that I see on screen. To look at the data together with all the other designers and them appearing as avatars, you know, and they're pointing with me to do a classic review that we used to do in the courtyard with the VR glasses on, and I have to do that. I feel like I have to do that.
You're doing that from home?
No, at home I don't have the equipment.
Oh, okay, now I get it. So you're all in the courtyard with no model, with the VR goggles on.
No, we are going to work in the studio, and we're sitting downstairs with a big screen like a Powerwall, but then also additionally with the goggles on, so that some people can see without goggles what we're looking at.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And some people have the goggles.
Okay.
But my whole team doesn't have the whole installment and equipment at home to do the same thing parallel at home. And that's a disadvantage, and that's why we're going into the studio with all the hygienic precautions to meet there, so that at least once a week we have an on-site review.
On-site review, yeah. Well, it's good for the team spirit too. The guys, you know, the feeling that you guys can get together again. It's a team, you know. That's how it operates, and I think that's very important too. We'll get out of this phase. It's going to take a little bit more time, I'm sure, but when we're on the other side of it, we'll look back and think, okay, we have to accept it, you know. I don't think from one day to the next we're going to stop wearing masks. You know, there'll still be people wearing masks 5 years from now, 10 years, and it just becomes a lifestyle. But yeah, I was always wondering how the studio is now. I'm out of the actual day-to-day studio environment. So I was working on eVTOL jet design last year for an American company. And we did the whole development, at least from the design engineering point of view, we did it all online. They were based in San Francisco. And I was thinking, how is this going to work? We have to have the plane finished by the end of the year in order to go to a physical working prototype. And without moving from where I'm sitting now, we were able to go from zero. Well, we had engineering, but we didn't have we had a package, but no design, all the way from exterior design and interior design in about 10 months. It's actually faster. It was working, like you said, with VR and with digital data and everything, and completely satisfactory results. In fact, it came out very, very nice. You know, I was surprised. So it's a new method of working, I think, that we're all going to be looking forward to in a certain way, because it does take a little bit of the daily, not that design is not fun every day, but at the same time, if every day you're doing the repetition of the same thing every day, it can be exciting to spend 2 days at home a week or something and work from home. You know, it's a little bit of variety is good sometimes too.
You would never consider yourself then retired?
No, I can't. Retire is like, okay, it's time to die. No, I don't see retirement as being fun or anything.
Maybe we have to take this opportunity then to take out some motorcycles and go for a ride.
Well, yes, yeah. Achim, if you're very interested, I'm going end of this year. I want to do a trip down in the south of Morocco on dirt bikes. So it's an organized thing. You know, you go down there, the bikes are there waiting for you, and you go out through the Atlas Mountains in the south of Morocco and you spend 1 week on the bikes, and you know, you live like real men. You know, you forget about showers and brushing your teeth or whatever. smell like animals afterwards, but that's life. You're awake and you're alive during that time, you know.
I did it one time with my daughter. I went to Morocco on a motorcycle, on a 850 BMW.
Oh, the GS.
It was my present for her school graduation, for her A-levels.
Present for you or for her?
For her, for her, obviously.
It sounds like a present for you. Good. Yeah, 850 G. It was GS, right? 850.
Yeah, it was an off-road enduro.
Yeah, beautiful
Exactly.
bikes. Yeah.
Talking about the motorcycle times, there's one video only online of those former times of mine, which is incredibly cheesy. You have no idea. Music is really synthesizer style, which is in a way already cool again.
Is this on YouTube, Achim?
It is on YouTube. It's called Early Achim Anscheid. Yes. And I had this one VHS tape digitized, and I had it on my hard drive. And my daughter was visiting me from Spain here in Berlin, and I went out in the evening. She was already 16, and she said, "Hey, do you mind if I watch some videos on your laptop?" Yeah, no problem. But she also then had a conversation with her boyfriend at the time. And he was also a motocross pilot, like you were in your younger days. You know?
So he's a bit crazy.
Yeah. And then she said, "Well, my dad is doing this trials riding, and my grandfather did this and this in Grand Prix bikes," and he didn't believe her. He thought she would just show off in a way, and she said, "Well, I'm gonna show you." And then she was digging through my hard drive and found that video. She knew that the video is on there somewhere. Opened up a YouTube channel and put it on that channel, and that's why that is online since then.
So this is with the cheesy music, you mean?
Yes, and my haircut is also extremely cheesy.
What, you weren't wearing a helmet or what?
Well, have a look.
I'll definitely have a look at that. Early Achim Anscheid. That'll be a good one to watch. We'll have to bring excerpts of that into this and show people.
Oh, yeah.
That could be funny. No, that's not him. Yes, it is.
Yeah, and that's where the music comes from.
Wow, good. Yeah, we're starting to show our age, I think. Well, that's great, Achim. Real pleasure to speak to you. It's nice that we can do this, even though we are, going through these crazy times. We can still connect and speak like we're in the same room almost. So I learned a lot, Achim. It's impressive every time, we get a chance to do something like this is fantastic because it brings us closer together. I think that's the main thing.
Mm. I mean, you've for a lot of people, you've been the hero through their design career. You know that, Frank. And I always have to think of you when I look at the Mini One, the first rebirth, and seeing the package of that car compared to the modern cars now, obviously for safety regulations and so on. But that original new Mini almost has the charm of the old Mini, in terms of size, presentation. It is substantially bigger, but that thing sits there. In German we say so knuffig, so
knuffig, yeah,
tightly packaged. It's quite nice to see, It's
you get a chance. You have to feel really grateful that you have the chance to be there at the right time and the right moment in history to have a project like that. It's very rare. I know how lucky I am to have been there during that period and to have had that chance. And you never know, like you say, it can go right, it can go wrong. You just hope it goes right. But again, it's the kind of history that the Mini had meant that it was in the minds of a lot of people, and if you respect that and you handle it responsibly, then you bring that car into the future, and it's a new life. It's like an incarnation of the original. And time tells. Later, if we know in 20 years if it's on the Pebble Beach lawn, then we did a good job. But yeah, no, it's. Thanks for that viewpoint. Thanks, Achim. Yeah. I think we all go through the same struggles as designers. There's the high points and the low points. Nobody really ever sees the low points, except the high points are publicized, and it's a long journey as a designer. Nobody knows what's in front of them, but I think if you do your best, all the young designers out there, they're worried first of all about getting a job, but once they get the job, then they want to be involved in a great project. So I think patience is a virtue in the design world. It's a long haul. It's not an overnight trip from the university to being recognized, I guess you could say. But at the same time, it's definitely the profession for you and me. I'm sure that we couldn't. I mean, there are other things we could do, but it's so we can feel so blessed that we're in this position to do what we do. I think, and it's incredible that they pay us money.
I always tell young designers to get their career started. Don't try to finish school and university starts or already when you are a teenager. Where does the life experience go? I always tell them, go and see the world. It doesn't really matter if you enter into a design studio when you're 21 or if you're 25. I much rather have a person there that has more experience, has seen the world, and then also try to do as many internships as you can, to also make connections, to meet people, and that will be eventually, those will be the people that give you a job also in the very end. And I have never hired a designer without having that designer in the studio before as an intern in Bugatti.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, it's such a position of responsibility, and that the people you put in the studio, you want them to work very well. They don't have to have the same way of thinking, but at least they're positive energy in the studio. It's very easy to get radical people from the design creative industry into your studio, which is a good thing too. But what you want is a team that really good, like gears that work very well together. They're positive energy, and you try to avoid anybody who's sort of rocks the boat in a negative way. Rocking the boat is good, but we know you want different viewpoints and things. But basically, the energy of the studio is so critical to getting good results.
This also brings me to the point. I don't want to extend this, our time. There's also a different way how we work in Bugatti Design. Speaking about the feeling of a team. Remember the studio times where there was sort of a tough competition, and 10 people would get a scale model, and then 3 people would get a full size, and then down to 1 full size. And that can also have overly competitive effects that are not only healthy. And we came to another working style, or at least that's how Divo and La Voiture Noire and 110 and Bolide was created. We work as one team in this VR environment. And we relatively early pick a stylistic direction that we like and that we all can identify with, that this is a good direction. But then the whole team continues working in this direction. And then we take something from that designer and that improvement from here. They all work basically on one car. Instead of starting with 15 cars, then we focus in relatively early, and then And then we start improving, and everybody is a little hero of the day, because tomorrow it will be another designer being the hero of the day. And in the end, it is really, the product is much more of a close-knitted, friendly teamwork. It's a true teamwork. That's why it's actually, with the Bugatti cars, okay, there is in the very end a lead designer, but actually all the modern day Bugattis, starting from the Chiron and the derivatives from the Veyron, they are truly teamwork in general.
Well, the good thing there also that I really believe, I agree with you, Achim, is the concentration is on the period of refinement more than just, developing themes. Get to the theme that most people are in agreement with, and then really refine it. And you have the different views from great professionals on your team working on it, and the refinement period is what really takes it to the next level.
This is also the reason why I allow my team then to publish their sketches on an equal level. There is not that one person that has done it. They are all allowed to show their sketches and also display them in the media, in the communication, because I think this is a fair this is a fair deal, like everybody really contributed, so everybody gets a fair share of communication as well.
Yeah, and everybody has this sense of pride also, which is very important for a designer. They're all it's a sensitive character or psychology that creates that a creative person has, and when they feel good, they do their best work. I think when they're feeling like that, so that's good. Great way to run the team. Continued success, Achim. I wish you guys all the best, and everybody in the world is looking forward to the next Bugatti, I'm sure.
I'm looking forward to the motorcycle trip in Morocco.
We have planned on it. Good. After this, we get together. We'll start putting together the things that we have to pack to survive. Good, Achim. A real pleasure speaking with you.
The pleasure was mine. Thank you very much, Frank. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. We'll speak soon. Bye-bye.